In this presentation, we will continue on with the vendor section, this time taking a look at the form of the purchases form. It's time to account with Sage 50 Cloud Accounting. Here we are in our Sage 50 practice file, the Bellwether Garden Supplies. We're in the vendors and purchases section. So we're within the vendors and purchases section on the left-hand side. Last time we looked at some of their major forms, that being the enter bills and the paying of the bills. This time we're going to move on over to the purchase orders. Now remember that the purchase orders is something you're only going to be seeing if you're in the system where you're buying inventory. So typically this is going to be a form with regards to the purchasing of inventory. Now when you are purchasing inventory, it's a little bit different than you might think of as a personal purchase. And that's why this form can be one of the more confusing forms. One thing that's confusing about it is that it actually doesn't make any effect on the financial statements. It looks like it would, because you're going to have numbers on it, and like inventory items, you would think it'd have a lot of effect on the financial statement, but it doesn't, because this is basically a request form. So it's going to be something that is important, something we need to track, something that we're going to help to match up with the bill once the bill comes through. However, nothing actually happens on the financial statement. So what is happening here? We're going to make a purchase order. Let's imagine we're buying some like cups from China or something like that. We're buying the cups. We're going to be purchasing them over. We're sending the purchase order for the request for those cups, and that will give the amount of the cups and you know, the purchasing terms of the cups, the cost possibly of the cups. At that point in time, nothing has happened. Unlike if we would have purchased something on like Amazon or something like that, where we would have to pull off the credit card and make the payment at that point in time, right? If we're just sending the purchase order and say, hey, we would just like these to be shipped over, and when they get here, if you give us a bill with it, then we'll pay you. Then it's a different transaction, because although it's just a request, nothing has happened at that point in time in terms of inventory has not yet been received, no payment has been made, therefore nothing on the financial statements at that point in time, although something has happened with regards to a request of inventory. Then once that information is shipped or gets to us, we see it in our warehouse, we're going to then be matching out the purchase order to the bill that we're imagining comes with the shipment of the cups, and we will then match those two things out, and we can think about the link between the bill and the purchase order. So let's consider the purchase order. Let's be opening up the purchase order. We're going to say we're going to have a new purchase order here. And let's maximize the screen and just make a purchase order. I'm going to just imagine we had one here. Once again, we have a vendor. The vendor would basically be populated for us. So I'm going to say, let's choose that vendor. We're going to be populating this information. We note then that if we have the vendor set up already, this would probably, if they're going to be people that we purchase inventory from, we would have all the details set up in the vendor for them, because we're going to need basically the shipping information and all that kind of stuff. So if I tab through this, we're going to say, I'm going to put the date. Let's just change the date a bit and make it up to like the 20th. And the purchase order number, I'm going to put it in a purchase order number, and that's going to be it. Then we'd have the quantity of things that we're going to be purchasing. Let's say 7 this time, and we're going to say the item is going to be, yeah, it's going to be that birdhouse. So there we have it. And then the account that's going to be going into inventory, because typically when we're using a purchase order, we're purchasing inventory, unit price, amount, and there we have it. Now again, if you were to look at this, you'd be saying, hey, that looks a lot like a something should be recorded at this point, because we got inventory item on there, and we got a number like this number here. It seems like there should be something on the financial statements. And but again, nothing has really happened in terms of us receiving the inventory or us owing for the inventory, because the terms are once we get it, then we're going to record it into inventory. So actually no transactions happening here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's say we save that, close that back out. Then we can take a look at the purchase orders, and we can view and edit the purchase orders. We can basically track the purchase orders with the option down here. And that's going to give us our purchase orders, our listing of the purchase orders, and whether they are open or not. So I believe this is the one we made here, the 391.30, which is an open purchase order. Now at some point in time, we're imagining the cups then come in and they have a bill with it. So then we're going to say, all right, now we're going to enter the bill. We'd go into the enter the bill. I'm going to say we have a new bill here. I'm going to maximize this just to see how this connection works. We're going to select the drop down, and then I'm going to pick this first item again. And you'll note that jumps over then from the apply to purchases to the purchase order screen. So I'm on the first tab now, because the system is basically saying, Sage is saying, hey, look, there's purchase orders related to this vendor. Do you want to select a purchase order for them? and we're going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and select that purchase order, then the purchase order will link over and help us to populate the bill. So now we've got a bill similar to what we've done in the past, but now instead of it being kind of a standalone bill, it's being linked to the purchase order, and we see that information from the purchase order now populating over onto the bill. So we got the 7 remaining, and there we got the information that's going to be populated. Now, if we enter the bill, then this is going to be the amount. So obviously, again, this is the remaining. Let's say we received 7 of them on the bill, and that'll populate the amount here. So now once we enter the bill, that's when, at this point in time, when we received the inventory and got the bill with it, that we would be increasing the accounts payable as well as the inventory. So that's going to be the purchase order. That's going to be it for now. Well, let's get out of here.